Adam Stokes was the kind of guy who could get away with almost anything. With a smile that could disarm a firing squad and a charm that wrapped itself around your heart like velvet, he was the person everyone wanted to be around. He was a senior at Northwood High, captain of the basketball team, and the guy everyone expected to win prom king without even trying. He had it all: the looks, the popularity, and, most enviably, the girl. Rachel Thomas was as perfect as a high school girlfriend could get. Gorgeous, smart, and kind. She was the kind of girl that made other girls secretly wish they could hate her, but simply couldn't. She and Adam had been together since sophomore year, and to everyone at Northwood, they were the perfect couple. The kind that ends up together in yearbooks, reunions, and eventually in life. It was almost unfair how well they fit together. But beneath the perfectly polished surface of their relationship, something else was brewing. Adam had never been the type to settle, at least not when it came to the attention of others. He loved Rachel, sure, but he also loved the way other girls looked at him, the way they giggled when he walked by, and the way their eyes lingered just a little too long. It started off innocent enough, a casual conversation here, a few flirtatious texts there. Nothing that would raise any alarms, not even in Rachel, who trusted Adam with her whole heart. But then came Cassie Richards. Cassie was the new girl, the kind of transfer student who turned heads from day one. She was mysterious, with long black hair that fell in waves down her back and green eyes that seemed to see right through people. She wasn't like the other girls at Northwood. She didn't fawn over Adam or try to get his attention. In fact, she barely acknowledged him at all, which of course only made him more interested. Adam first noticed her during lunch one day, sitting alone at the far end of the cafeteria, reading a book with a cover so worn it was impossible to tell what it was. She was the opposite of Rachel in almost every way. Dark where Rachel was light, introverted where Rachel was social, a puzzle waiting to be solved. It wasn't long before Adam found himself drawn to her, like a moth to a flame. He told himself it was harmless, that he was just being friendly. After all, Cassie was new, and it was the polite thing to do. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. There was something about her that he couldn't resist, something that made him want to know more, to see more. So he approached her. "Hey, you're Cassie, right?" Adam said, sliding into the seat across from her. Cassie looked up from her book, her green eyes narrowing slightly. "And you're Adam." He was taken aback by how she said his name, like she knew exactly who he was. But it meant nothing to her. It was a challenge, and Adam had never been one to back down from a challenge. "Mind if I sit here?" he asked, flashing his signature smile. She shrugged, not looking particularly interested either way. "Suit yourself." Adam had never had to work so hard to keep a conversation going. Cassie answered his questions with short, clipped sentences, never offering more than the bare minimum. It was infuriating, but also intoxicating. The more she held back, the more Adam wanted to break through her walls. Over the next few weeks, Adam found himself seeking out Cassie more and more. He'd catch her after class, during free periods, even after school when he should have been at practice. Rachel noticed, of course, but Adam was always quick with an excuse. A group project, helping Cassie adjust to a new school, nothing for her to worry about. But it was clear to anyone paying attention that something was happening between Adam and Cassie, something that wasn't just about schoolwork or being friendly. There was an undeniable chemistry between them, one that was growing stronger by the day. One afternoon, after weeks of stolen glances and subtle flirtation, Adam found himself standing outside Cassie's locker, heart pounding in his chest. He had no idea what he was doing or why he was doing it, but he knew he couldn't stop himself. "Hey, Cassie," he said, leaning casually against the lockers. "Got a minute?" Cassie closed her locker door and looked at him with that same unreadable expression she always wore. "What's up?" "Listen," Adam began, struggling to find the right words. "I know this might sound a little weird, but I feel like there's something between us." Cassie raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into a faint smile. "Something?" "Yeah, like a connection," Adam said, feeling more awkward by the second. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He was Adam Stokes, the guy who always knew what to say. But Cassie made him feel like he was back in middle school, trying to talk to his first crush. Cassie looked at him for a long moment, and for the first time since he'd met her, Adam thought he saw something shift in her expression. "And what about Rachel?" she asked, her voice low and smooth. Adam felt a pang of guilt at the mention of his girlfriend's name, but it wasn't enough to stop him. "Rachel doesn't have to know," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Cassie's smile widened just a fraction, and she took a step closer to him, her green eyes locking onto his. "You're playing with fire, Adam." "I know," he said, his breath catching in his throat, "but I can't help it." For a moment, they stood there, so close that Adam could feel the heat radiating off her skin. Then, without another word, Cassie leaned in and kissed him. It was a kiss unlike any Adam had ever experienced. Fierce, demanding, and utterly intoxicating. It was the kind of kiss that made you forget everything else, that made you want to lose yourself in the moment and never come back. When they finally pulled away, Adam's mind was spinning. He knew he was crossing a line, but he couldn't bring himself to care. Cassie had awakened something in him, something dark and thrilling, and there was no turning back. "You're not the only one who can't help it," Cassie whispered, her lips brushing against his ear. Adam swallowed hard, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew he was in deep, but he didn't care. All he could think about was Cassie and the way she made him feel. And as he watched her walk away, he knew that this was just the beginning. Days turned into weeks, and Adam's life became a delicate balancing act between the lie he was living and the truth he was hiding. He spent his days with Rachel, playing the part of the perfect boyfriend, while his nights were consumed with thoughts of Cassie. It was a dangerous game, but one that Adam found himself unable to resist. He was careful, though, too careful. He and Cassie never met in public, never texted anything incriminating, and never gave anyone any reason to suspect that there was more to their relationship than what met the eye. But the secrecy only made it more thrilling, like they were the only two people in the world who knew the truth. And the truth was, Adam was addicted to Cassie. Every stolen moment, every secret kiss, every whispered word, it all fed the fire that burned inside him. He couldn't get enough, no matter how much he tried. And the more he had, the more he wanted. Rachel, on the other hand, was blissfully unaware. She was busy with her own life, her friends, her studies, her future. She and Adam had plans to go to the same college, to build a life together, to be the couple everyone always said they would be. But Adam was too wrapped up in his affair with Cassie to notice how much he was neglecting Rachel. It all came to a head one Friday night at a party. It was supposed to be a casual get-together at one of Adam's teammates' houses, just some drinks and music to unwind after a long week. Rachel was there, of course, dressed to the nines and glowing with happiness. She was excited to spend time with Adam, especially since he had been so distant lately. But Adam's mind was elsewhere. He couldn't stop thinking about Cassie, about the last time they had been together, about the way she had looked at him as if he were the only person in the world who mattered. He was barely listening to Rachel, nodding along to whatever she was saying while his eyes scanned the room for Cassie. He finally spotted her near the back, leaning against the wall with a drink in her hand, looking as effortlessly cool as ever. She met his gaze, and for a moment, it was like the entire party faded away. Adam felt a jolt of adrenaline shoot through him, and he knew he had to be with her. "I'm going to get another drink," Adam said to Rachel, flashing her a quick smile before making his way across the room. Rachel watched him go, her smile faltering slightly. She'd been trying so hard to keep things normal between them, but something felt off. Adam wasn't the same, and she couldn't shake the feeling that he was slipping away from her. Adam reached Cassie, his heart pounding in his chest. "Hey," he said, trying to keep his voice casual. "Hey yourself," Cassie replied, her eyes glinting with mischief. "Having fun?" Not really, Adam admitted, his voice low. I've been thinking about you. Cassie smirked, leaning in closer. Is that so? Adam nodded, his pulse quickening. I need to see you. Alone. Cassie glanced around the room, her smile widening. Follow me. She led him through the crowd and out the back door, into the cool night air. The sound of the party faded behind them as they walked around to the side of the house where it was dark and secluded. Adam's heart was racing, his hands shaking with anticipation. Cassie turned to face him, her eyes locking onto his. You know, Adam, she said, her voice low and sultry. This is getting dangerous. I don't care, Adam replied, his voice rough with desire. I can't stay away from you. Cassie's smile widened, and she reached up to run her fingers through his hair. You're going to get caught, you know that, right? Maybe, Adam admitted, his breath catching as she leaned in closer. But it's worth it. Cassie's lips curled into a wicked grin, and she closed the distance between them, her lips crashing against his in a fierce, passionate kiss. Adam's arms wrapped around her, pulling her close as the world around them disappeared. They were so caught up in the moment that neither of them noticed the figure standing in the shadows, watching them. Neither of them saw the flash of betrayal in Rachel's eyes, nor the way her hands trembled as she turned and walked away. Rachel's world had just come crashing down around her, and she had no idea what to do. As the night wore on, Adam and Cassie were lost in their own little world, unaware of the storm that was brewing just around the corner. They had no idea that their dangerous game was about to come to a head, and that the consequences would be far more devastating than they could ever have imagined. For Adam, this was just the beginning of a twisted, tangled web of lies and deceit that would threaten to destroy everything he held dear. And as for Rachel, her life would never be the same again. Because some betrayals are so deep, so painful, that they can never be forgiven. And the worst part is, Adam didn't even see it coming. The school hallways seemed to close in on Adam as he navigated through them, his mind a chaotic swirl of regret and disbelief. The conversation with Rachel had left him feeling hollow, and he couldn't shake the image of her tear-streaked face from his mind. As the days went on, Adam struggled to maintain his composure. He forced himself to smile, to laugh with his friends, but the weight of his actions bore down on him, dragging him into a shadowy abyss of remorse. Cassie, on the other hand, seemed unfazed by the fallout. She was as enigmatic and aloof as ever, moving through school with an air of detached indifference. It was as if she existed in a different world, one where the consequences of their actions didn't matter. She greeted Adam with a casual air, as though nothing had changed. But Adam could sense the subtle shift in her demeanor. The once intoxicating thrill of their secret meetings now felt like a dark cloud hanging over him. The guilt gnawed at him, and he found himself questioning everything he had once valued. Despite his attempts to reach out to Rachel, she had remained firm in her decision. She refused to see him, to hear his apologies. It was as if a door had slammed shut, leaving him outside in the cold. One afternoon, as Adam walked through the school courtyard, he saw Rachel sitting with her friends. She was laughing, her eyes bright despite the recent heartbreak. It was a painful reminder of what he had lost, and Adam's heart ached with a mixture of anger and sorrow. He knew he had no right to interfere in her life anymore, but he couldn't help the desperate longing to make things right. Meanwhile, Cassie had become more assertive in her interactions with Adam. She would seek him out between classes, pulling him aside for quick, intense conversations that left him more conflicted than ever. Her presence, once a source of excitement, now felt like an additional weight on his already burdened shoulders. One evening, as Adam sat in his room, trying to piece together the wreckage of his life, he received a text from Cassie. "We need to talk." Adam's pulse quickened. Despite his inner turmoil, he couldn't deny the magnetic pull Cassie had on him. He agreed to meet her at their usual spot, a secluded park bench behind the school. When he arrived, Cassie was already there, her silhouette outlined by the dim light of the street lamps. She looked up as he approached, her expression unreadable. "Hey," Adam said, his voice betraying his apprehension. "Hey," Cassie replied, her tone unusually serious. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. Adam fidgeted, his eyes darting around the park as if seeking some form of escape. "So," Cassie began, her voice breaking the silence, "I hear Rachel's been avoiding you." Adam sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Yeah, she has. She won't even talk to me." Cassie's gaze was steady, but there was a hint of something, perhaps pity or something colder. "Do you regret it?" The question hit Adam like a punch to the gut. He had been trying to avoid confronting the reality of his actions, but Cassie's bluntness forced him to face it. "I don't know," he said finally, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't know what I'm doing anymore." Cassie's expression softened, but only slightly. "You know," she said, her tone reflective, "sometimes we think we're chasing something thrilling, but what we're really doing is running away from something else. It's easy to get lost in the excitement and forget what we're leaving behind." Adam looked at her, feeling a pang of realization. "Are you saying you regret it too?" Cassie shook her head, her eyes meeting his with a mix of resolve and something akin to resignation. "I never said that. I just think we're both trying to escape something. Maybe it's time to face what we're running from." The conversation left Adam more unsettled than before. He knew that Cassie was right about one thing. He was running from something. But what was he really running from? The questions remained unanswered as he left the park that night, feeling more lost than ever. Back at school, the atmosphere was tense. Rumors about the breakup between Adam and Rachel had spread like wildfire, and everyone seemed to have an opinion. The once supportive friends were now whispering behind his back, and the students who used to admire him were now casting sidelong glances. Adam felt like a pariah in his own world. Rachel, meanwhile, had thrown herself into her work and her friends. She was determined to move on, to rebuild her life without Adam. But the pain of betrayal lingered, a constant reminder of the love she had lost. She was trying to find solace in her new routine, but the void left by Adam's absence was impossible to ignore. As the days turned into weeks, Adam continued to grapple with his actions. His relationship with Cassie had become a tangled mess of conflicting emotions. He couldn't deny the chemistry between them, but every encounter left him feeling emptier and more conflicted. One afternoon, as Adam sat alone in the library, lost in thought, he noticed Rachel walking by. She was with her friends, laughing and talking animatedly. The sight of her happiness was a sharp reminder of what he had destroyed. He wanted to call out to her, to apologize once more, but he knew it would be pointless. He had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. In the quiet solitude of the library, Adam's mind raced with memories of Rachel and the life they had planned together. He realized that his actions had not only hurt her, but had also irrevocably changed him. The carefree boy who once thrived on attention and excitement had been replaced by someone who was struggling to come to terms with the consequences of his choices. The final weeks of the school year arrived, and the air was thick with a mix of anticipation and tension. The end of senior year was supposed to be a time of celebration, but for Adam and Rachel, it was overshadowed by the wreckage of their broken relationship. Rachel had thrown herself into her studies and extracurricular activities, determined to finish the year strong despite the personal turmoil. She was graduating with honors and had been accepted into a prestigious university. She was moving forward, focusing on her future and leaving the past behind. Adam, on the other hand, was struggling to come to terms with the aftermath of his actions. His relationship with Cassie had fizzled out, the excitement replaced by a stark realization of what he had lost. He was no longer the star athlete, the charming boyfriend. He was just another student trying to navigate the fallout of his mistakes. As graduation approached, the atmosphere at Northwood High was filled with a mix of excitement and nostalgia. The school was abuzz with preparations for the ceremonies, but for Adam and Rachel, it was a bittersweet reminder of what could have been. On the day of graduation, the sun shone brightly as students and families gathered for the ceremony. Rachel looked radiant in her cap and gown, her smile a testament to her resilience. She had come through the storm, stronger and more determined than ever. Adam, meanwhile, was a shadow of his former self. He attended the ceremony out of obligation, feeling like an outsider in a world that no longer belonged to him. As he sat among his classmates, he couldn't help but glance over at Rachel, who was surrounded by her friends and family. The sight of her happiness was both a comfort and a torment, a reminder of the love he had lost and the pain he had caused. The graduation ceremony was a blur for Adam. The speeches, the applause, the moment when his name was called, everything felt distant and surreal. When the ceremony ended, he found himself standing alone, trying to process the reality of his situation. Rachel had been swept up by her friends and family, caught in the whirlwind of celebration. Adam watched from a distance, feeling a pang of longing and regret. He knew he had no right to intrude on her moment, but the desire to make amends was overwhelming. As the crowd began to thin out, Adam took a deep breath and made his way toward Rachel. He could see her standing with her parents, her smile genuine and joyful. He hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to say or how to approach her. But as he took a step forward, Rachel turned and saw him. For a moment their eyes locked, and the world seemed to stand still. There was a flicker of recognition in Rachel's gaze, followed by a look of guarded indifference. Adam felt a lump form in his throat as he approached her. "Rachel," he said, his voice trembling. "Can we talk?" Rachel looked at him, her expression unreadable. "I don't know if that's a good idea, Adam." "I know," Adam said, his voice filled with regret. "I just wanted to tell you that I'm sorry, for everything. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I wanted you to know how truly sorry I am." Rachel studied him for a moment, her eyes searching his face. There was a sadness in her gaze, but also a glimmer of something, perhaps understanding or acceptance. "I appreciate the apology, Adam," she said finally. "But it doesn't change what happened. I've moved on, and I hope you can too." Adam nodded, feeling a mix of relief and heartache. "I understand. I just wanted to make things right, even if it's too late." Rachel gave him a small, sad smile. "Goodbye, Adam." As Rachel turned and walked away, Adam felt a wave of emotion wash over him. He watched her go, knowing that this was truly the end. She was moving on with her life, and he was left to face the consequences of his actions alone. In the weeks that followed, Adam struggled to find his footing. He spent his summer working and reflecting on the choices that had led him to this point. He knew that he had a long road ahead of him, one filled with the task of rebuilding his life and learning from his mistakes. Rachel, meanwhile, embraced her new chapter with optimism and strength. She was excited for the future and determined to make the most of the opportunities that lay ahead. Her journey had been painful, but it had also been transformative, leading her to a place of resilience and self-discovery. As the summer came to an end and college loomed on the horizon, both Adam and Rachel looked back on their time at Northwood High with a mixture of nostalgia and relief. They had been through a tumultuous journey, but they had emerged stronger and wiser. In the end, their story was a testament to the complexities of love and the consequences of betrayal. It was a reminder that actions have repercussions, and that sometimes the hardest part is facing the reality of what has been lost. For Adam and Rachel, the past was a part of their journey, but it was the future that held the promise of new beginnings. And as they each embarked on their separate paths, they carried with them the lessons learned and the hope that, despite the pain, they would find their way to a better place.